Imagine an alternative reality in which Destiny 3 was made. Players are thrilled, the franchise is thriving, and Bungie is celebrated as an industry titan. But back in our reality, Destiny 2 is winding down, fans are furious, and the studio is in absolute chaos. Why? Because of a masterclass in corporate failure. Today, we're looking past the internet rage. We use scientific leadership concepts to show how Bungie's strategy systematically destroyed their own masterpiece and how you can avoid these failures yourself. Welcome to Tactical Mindscape. Here, we use games to explain leadership without the usual nonsense. If you want to improve your leadership knowledge through gaming, hype, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss another concept. So, the story starts with the acquisition of Bungie by Sony. Sony paid billions for Bungie because Bungie looked like one of the few studios that truly understood live service games. And they made Halo. That belief had evidence behind it. Destiny 2 ran for years. It had expansions, seasons, raids, new items, and cosmetics, and a whole lot more. Bungie knew how to keep a game alive, or so it seemed. After being bought, Bungie announced major layoffs, as is so often the case. Sony later recorded impairment losses tied to Bungie assets. Destiny 2 reached its final live service content update. Destiny 3 was reportedly neither active nor greenlit. Marathon, hold your booze, became the most visible next major bet. This leads to a very simple narrative that we see online a lot. Sony being tricked, Bungie killing Destiny 3 on purpose, Destiny 3 saving the studio, Marathon already being doomed. All of that goes beyond the evidence. It might be true, but we speculate at best. What we can say is that Sony and Bungie ended up inside a management trap where answering the obvious fan question, hey, where's Destiny 3, becomes much harder than it sounds. So how do we go about answering that question? If you work under bad leadership, we explain how a future can disappear while the plan still sounds rational in a meeting. If you manage people, build products, or run a team, this is a warning about a mistake that feels reasonable right until the bill arrives. A working machine can look like a healthy organization. That's the Bungie lesson. Destiny 2 worked, and that made the trap dangerous. A live service game works differently from a normal product. You can't build it, sell it, and walk away. It has to keep operating. It needs updates, maintenance, monetization, bug fixes, community management, new reasons to log in, new promises to replace the promises players already used up. And that was Bungie's reputation. Bungie had a famous franchise, but Sony thought it was buying something larger than just a franchise. It evidently wasn't even that interested in the franchise. Sony said the acquisition would give PlayStation access to Bungie's live game services and technology expertise. That is the key sentence. Sony was buying the belief that Bungie's knowledge could help solve the live service problem. But live service knowledge does not pour from one project into another like orange juice. That knowledge resides in people, sure, but also in systems, processes, and the community that is attached to that specific project. The management failure begins when leaders confuse visible output with the hidden system that produces it. So, 3 ideas explain the trap: information asymmetry, path dependency, and core rigidity. Let's start with information asymmetry. Information asymmetry seems like a very easy problem to understand. One of the parties knows more than the other party. That is essentially the core of George Akerlof's lemon problem. Sony knew less about the live service market than Bungie when they acquired them. In this case, Sony was the buyer and Bungie sold the lemon. But is Sony the good guy and Bungie the bad guy? Poor, innocent Sony would never sell a lemon themselves, would they? Well, no. Sony did not tell Bungie they were sunsetting Destiny 2 in June 2026. They held all the information about Destiny 2's true sunsetting timeline and Marathon's development struggles while feeding Bungie and therefore players and lower-level devs a false reality. By creating severe information asymmetry, they turned their own community into cynical buyers who assumed every corporate promise was a lemon, ultimately tanking sales and player trust. So why did Sony make that mistake? Michael Spence explains how a person or company with hidden information sends a costly, credible signal, like a premium credential or an expensive marketing campaign, to prove their true quality and build trust with a skeptical audience. So in short, if you do not understand the product, you rely on visible signs of quality. So how do you stop that? Well, they did try. Sony isn't stupid. They used his screening method. Stiglitz's screening explains how a party with less information forces the party with more information to reveal their true nature or intentions by offering them a choice of structured options, like a hiring manager offering a job applicant two contract choices, a low base salary with massive performance bonuses versus a high fixed salary with no bonuses, to automatically force them to reveal how confident they actually are in their own skills. When Sony bought Bungie, they set up financial screens, basically telling Bungie leadership, if you hit these massive revenue targets, you get to keep your independent board seats. Sony thought the screen would force Bungie to reveal if they actually had a sustainable plan. But Bungie's leadership was so profoundly out of touch and so blindly confident in projects like Marathon that they smiled, signed the dotted line, and walked right into a buzzsaw. They weren't lying to Sony, they were lying to themselves. Sony thought they were screening a brilliant gaming titan, but instead they just allowed an overconfident management team to gamble the entire studio's future on a bet they were never equipped to win. In short, screening only measures confidence, not competence. Sony was not some clueless buyer wandering onto a used car lot. Sony had diligence. Sony had lawyers. Sony had industry knowledge. The real issue is that some qualities resist outside testing. Bungie had strong signals. They made Halo. Destiny survived longer than most live service games ever will. The studio had already lived through problems other companies were still trying to understand. Those signals meant something, just not what Sony hoped it signaled. Destiny's longevity showed that Bungie had done something difficult. It left other questions unanswered. Was the operating model still healthy? Was the capability durable? Could the knowledge transfer beyond Destiny? Destiny was the resume. If Sony had had the skills, they would have looked inside the machine, just like a mechanical engineer would never buy a lemon. Unfortunately, Sony wasn't a mechanical engineer and didn't understand cars at all. Sony could see the audience, see the cadence, and the reputation. The deeper conditions were harder to judge. How much technical debt had built up? How much institutional knowledge lived inside veteran developers? How much trust remained between leadership and the people doing the work? How much of Bungie's live service skill was portable? Those are all different questions. A product can ship while the process gets worse. Revenue can come in while the organization loses flexibility. A famous team can produce a famous result while depending on undocumented heroics nobody can safely replace. Competence goes deeper than output. Competence is the human system that keeps producing output when reality gets difficult. Sony did not need to be tricked for the acquisition to disappoint. The sharper question is whether Sony could fully price the fragile conditions that made Bungie valuable. After the acquisition, the visible signs got worse. Sony later said Destiny 2 sales and user engagement missed the expectation Sony had at the time of acquisition. The statement does not prove deception. It does, however, show a gap between expectation and reality. And the big question that raises is what to do when you hit that gap. We move to the concept of path dependency. Paul David's work on path dependency explains how history can trap a system. Let's define path dependency. Path dependency means once a system starts down a particular path, each later decision becomes shaped by the earlier ones. Over time, switching paths get harder, even when a better option exists. For management, the lesson is simple. A company does not only choose a strategy, it gets locked into a strategy. Once everyone and everything within a company adapts to the original strategy, the organization begins defending the path instead of reevaluating it. In plain English, path dependency is when yesterday's decisions become today's constraints. Maybe you've heard that companies are like oil tankers. It's very hard to get them to change direction. This is why this happens. It's a very difficult to change course for big organizations if you are on them. If you want to know why, look at our video about RimWorld with Victoria 3. Here I will just quote that video. At the large level, the reality is that local inefficiencies can create bigger advantages at a higher level. It doesn't matter if the process that is more efficient cannot be scaled up. At the large level, it is better to have an inefficient process that can be scaled up and replicated 100 times, rather than an efficient process that can only be done in one particular locality. This goes exactly the same for changes of the processes. It is exactly because large companies operate along those rules that changes in the process are so difficult to achieve. If you change the process, you do not just change the process in one specific place. It changes in many different places at once. Is it impossible to change the process at all 100 places all over the world? No, but it's going to take a long time. Relatively quick changes, such as with Bungie, need quick reactions. And guess what? That's not going to happen. For a player, Destiny 2 is exactly that kind of reality. You already know what path dependency feels like. You log in with years of gear, currencies, triumphs, ornaments, memories, raid clears, finished catalysts, old screenshots, seasonal rituals, and emotional baggage. Imagine resetting all of that to play a new Destiny 3. That reset threatens more than a save file. It threatens the meaning of what the old game asked you to earn. That's why Destiny 3 was never a simple product decision. It was a switching cost problem attached to a player base with years of accumulated investment. Kind of explains why there's no World of Warcraft 2. So when people ask why didn't they just make Destiny 3, the honest answer may be the word just had already disappeared, even before Sony acquired Bungie. Destiny 3 could have become another trap. Destiny 3 might have reset the wrong things, alienated committed players, burned cash, and created a new treadmill before solving the old one. It looks like a significantly better option than what you have now, but I wouldn't be so sure that it would have been the savior everyone thinks it is. Or some people suspect it may be. Having said that, Bungie still reached a point where the audience could see the need for a credible future path, and the organization did not appear to have one ready. That is the management problem. Destiny 3 became the symbol of the missing reset. Maybe it would have been the wrong reset. Maybe it would have failed. But when every reset looks impossible, strategic freedom has already shrunk. Sony had its own lock-in problems. Sony was pursuing live service growth, and Bungie was part of that story. If you buy Bungie because Bungie represents live service expertise, then admitting that you bought a lemon becomes politically harder to sell. That would question Bungie. It would also question the strategy that made Bungie valuable. So, Bungie had one path dependency inside Destiny 2. Sony had another inside PlayStation strategy. Both pushed in the same direction. Keep pushing live service. Keep treating Bungie as the expert. Keep hoping the next long-term game can solve the problems created by the last long-term game. That brings us to Marathon. Marathon might be good according to a good number of people in the Marathon subreddit. We already did a video on Marathon, so if you're interested in what Marathon can teach us, you can watch that one already. For now, we can suffice with the statement, Bungie could not live on Destiny 2 forever, so new IP may have been irrational. The management question is narrower. Does Marathon actually escape the Destiny trap? A new intellectual property does not automatically create a new operating model. Marathon still asks Bungie to build long-term engagement. It asks for everything you need to build a live service game, and that, well, I hear is a lot of work. When Naughty Dog found out how much work it would be, they immediately shelved the idea to make a live service Last of Us. And it asks for all that work to be done while Destiny is winding down. That does not necessarily make Marathon doomed, but I think it means Marathon carries some of the same organizational burden that made the Destiny problem so difficult. But there is more to the story. We have explained about the information asymmetry, the path dependency, but up until this point we assumed that organizational change was always possible. That is, however, a pretty big assumption to make. Could they have changed direction? To answer that question, we need to understand core rigidity. Dorothy Leonard Barton's core rigidities idea means a company's greatest strength can become the thing that traps it. A capability starts as a core capability, the thing the organization is unusually good at. It might be technical skill, culture process, design philosophy, brand identity, or even a way of solving problems. But over time, that strength hardens. People stop treating it as one useful tool and start treating it as the only correct way to operate. Then the same capability becomes a core rigidity. So, an example. Bungie's strength was building and sustaining a live service Destiny ecosystem. That was a core capability. But if leadership became unable to imagine value outside that structure, then the strength became a rigidity. Every problem gets solved by more seasons, more engagement loops, more monetization layers, more retention systems. The company becomes very good at maintaining the machine and very bad at questioning whether the machine should still exist in that form. So the simple version is, a core capability says this is what we do better than others. Core rigidity says this is what we are now incapable of not doing. Leonard Barton's warning is that organizations do not usually fail because they have no strengths. They fail because yesterday's strength becomes tomorrow's prison, a prison you can no longer escape from. Strengths become weaknesses over time. When the environment changes, the same systems can inhibit new development. That is core rigidity. This is the sharpest way to understand Bungie. The lazy version says Bungie forgot how to make good games. Me, I don't buy that. Bungie's strengths are real. Their gunplay is incredible, and that's real. The raids are real. The encounter design is real. The ability to make players care about a weapon roll or a raid clear is very real. And that's why this case hurts personally. Bungie had talent, has always had talent. They made some of the most enduring memories of my life. But in the real world, love is not enough. Bungie's live service strength may have hardened into the default answer. Keep Destiny alive. Extract lessons for PlayStation. Point the organization toward Marathon. Assume the magic and, more importantly, the player base transfers miraculously. But capability does not transfer like a file. Capability lives in context. That is why layoffs and restructuring affect more than headcount. Yeah, layoffs hit the whole industry. That doesn't erase Bungie's own official explanation. Overexpansion, too many projects, stretched talent, and exceeded financial safety margins. When a complex organization cuts and restructures, it risks losing undocumented judgment. Bungie's restructuring statement is brutal because it describes an operating system model under strain. Too much confidence that the organization could absorb pressure. That is how a core capability becomes a core rigidity. Bungie knew how to operate Destiny. Over time, operating Destiny became the default answer. Sony valued Bungie for live service expertise. Live service expertise then became the lens for the future. Marathon became the next major bet. Destiny 3 reportedly had no greenlight, no matter how many times leadership within Bungie tried to pitch it. The organization had to move forward while cutting, restructuring, and explaining why the obvious sequel was not the immediate path. Now, as per usual, we take what we have learned and use it in another sector. This time, Rex runs a mid-sized cosmetics manufacturing company. He has one legacy product line that works, a specialty skincare filler line. It's profitable, retailers like it, the formulas are stable, the team knows the quirks, the customers trust the quality. Then, Rex acquires a small outside team because their output looks excellent. They're fast, their samples look clean, their customers love them. They have a reputation for solving weird production problems. Rex believes he is buying capability. He sees the output and assumes he understands the system. The hidden parts get less attention. Rex doesn't actually understand the system. Surprise, surprise. Doesn't really care to understand it either. What a shocker. He just wants the shiny. Because of course he does, he's Rex. Rex just bought the scoreboard. That is information asymmetry. Then Rex repeats the Destiny 2 pattern. The legacy skincare line keeps working, so he keeps loading more onto it. More promotional bundles, rush orders, small batch exceptions, etc. The system survives, which makes the damage easy to ignore. Every week, orders ship. Every month, Rex says, see, it works. But it works because people are borrowing energy from the future. A reset would now hurt, but of course Rex doesn't see it. Why would he? Changing the line layout would interrupt shipments. Fixing the planning system would expose years of bad assumptions. Saying no to rush orders would cut revenue. Training new people would slow the veterans down. So Rex keeps the machine running. That, my friends, is path dependency. Then Rex makes the capability mistake. He assigns the same team to launch a new high-margin hair care line while the legacy skincare line keeps running. A new product, a new market, a new growth story. He keeps the old operating model. The team's original strength was flexibility. They were good because they knew when to bend. Rex turns that strength into a permanent demand. Now everything is a custom, urgent, special case. Isn't that great? The old strength hardens into rigidity. Then one veteran leaves. Another stops speaking up. A new hire fails because nobody can explain the real process. And of course, quality slips. Retailers get slower responses. The new line misses launch windows. The legacy line starts losing trust. Rex says, hey, I bought a great team. Why do they stop being great? The answer is simple. He bought a capability, then damaged the conditions that produced it. That is the lesson from Bungie. Revenue tells you the machine is still producing. It does not tell you what the machine is consuming to keep producing. In Bungie's case, the consumed material may have been player trust, developer stamina, institutional memory, and strategic flexibility. Destiny 3 hurts because it sounds like a fan demand. Why did they not just make the sequel? Underneath that question sits a management problem. Where was the exit plan? Where was the reset path? Where was the honest conversation with the people who had to build it? Where was the recognition that Destiny 2 could still function while becoming strategically dangerous? Sony thought Bungie had valuable live service knowledge. Bungie may have believed the same thing. As it turns out, that knowledge was embedded in people, trust, routines, tools, player memory, and hard-earned production judgment. Once that system was stretched too thin, the old strength became brittle. Once Destiny 2 became the unavoidable path, a clean reset became harder to justify. Once Marathon became the next major bet, Bungie was asking a strained organization to build another long-term service game while the first one was winding down. That's why the Destiny 3 question matters. Nobody can prove Destiny 3 would have saved Bungie, even if I personally really think it would have, and I'm bummed that it didn't happen. But the missing sequel exposes the trap. A company can be full of talented people and still be badly led. Present company not excluded. A product can still generate money while its future is being consumed. A strategy can look rational right up until everyone realizes it left no clean exit. The management lesson is blunt. Before you buy a capability, understand what produces it. Before you bet the future on your greatest strength, ask whether that strength has already become a cage. Because the machine can still run while it's eating the future. And by the time the machine stops, leadership usually says the same thing. No one could have seen this coming. Lord knows I've said that plenty of times. I mean, Rex has said that plenty of times. But inside the machine, the warning signs usually appeared much earlier. People just learned to stop treating them like warnings. I would like to take the time to thank the subreddits that contributed to this conversation and the Discord where we discuss these topics before they go live. Please like, share, and subscribe if you found any value in this video. But if you really want to help the channel, click on one of these videos. We'll see you next week with new insights and games here on Tactical Mindscapes. Thanks for watching.